Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to ZoomIN 83, our virtual get together. Vasant Vihar Diary is the brainchild of Vandana Bhatnagar, where she is compiling virtually stories, anecdotes, and information about Vasant Vihar. A trip down memory lane for many of us. Today, on January 26th, as we celebrate our 73rd Republic Day, I would like to read a short poem composed by Tagore. This is Gitanjali 35. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arm towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward into ever widening action and thought, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. This evening, we awaken old memories, memories that are perhaps as fresh as yesterday for many, and sharing them with us, our residents, who have seen Vasant Vihar grow into this thriving, vibrant community. The session today is being moderated by Raj Kamal Sharma, who is going to introduce himself and also the other speakers. Raj, over to you.
Thank you, Sanjana. It's always a pleasure to co-host these Zoom sessions with you. But today, of course, I have this onerous task of also moderating it. And there is a reason why Sanjana has entrusted this responsibility to me. I have often introduced myself as one of the early settlers of Vasant because 53 years ago, almost to the day, actually precisely 20th January 1969, when our house construction began and we did the Bhumi Pujan here. And those were wonderful times. The house was completed in, I think, like 7.5 months. And by 25th August 69, we even did Grih Pravesh. And I know that a lot of people are going to talk about this, but that period of construction, whether it was the peak winter of Jan-Feb, and as a lot of us know that winter in those years used to be particularly severe and longer than it is nowadays in Delhi. And then, of course, there were those really hot summery days. And I say that more about the what we saw of our father coming at that time on a two-wheeler, on a Lambretta scooter from the government accommodation that we were in, and he would come and supervise the construction and withstand the hot winds of May and June, and of course the monsoon. I mean, there was one particular day when I was coming with him on the scooter, and there were winds of some 130, 140 kilometers per hour, and we tried to hide ourselves under a tree right in front of Ashok Hotel, because we were coming from Himayu Road and going towards Vasant Vihar. I was, of course, a young school kid at that time, but I was, let's say, oriented into this by my father, and he he took me to the Lakkad Bazaar. He would take me. He would even send me to the. I think there was an office which would allocate cement to construct your house and so on and so forth. We didn't shift immediately after it was completed. Our first tenant was Commodore B.S. Baswan, who was in fact, a very active member of the Vasant Vihar Society, and I think the RWA at that time. Uh, Therefore, I thought that it would be only to right for me to invite Commodore Baswan's son, who is now our neighbor, and he will share some memories both of the early days in Vasant Vihar as well as some later days, because he was not living in Vasant Vihar at all times, but of course he has been staying here in recent times. We shifted here in 1970, and I was studying at that time in modern school, Barakhamba Road. Uh, there was no public transport available from Vasant Vihar, as all those people who were living here at that time know. And the closest bus stop was Moti Bagh. It was many years later that a bus stop came up, I think, at Swami Malai Mandir. And even later, when the first DTC route, 14B, started flying in Vasant Vihar, and those were not exactly the DTC buses, those were those private buses under DTC operation. And I think there were precisely 3 buses operating under route number 14B, which would go from here to, I think, somewhere downtown Regal building or somewhere. So that was our best connection with the outside world.
Raj,
Anyway,
you were going to show a picture of your house which was
I'm
constructed
going to do
in.
that one in a moment. I'm just, I want to say that, um, uh, you've broken my chain of thought, Sanjana.
I'm so
Anyway,
sorry. I thought you could have it as in the background
no, no,
while you're
I'm going to,
talking about
I'm,
all this construction.
no, no, no,
The
I'm
battles.
doing that. Okay, here goes. So this is a picture of our house in 1970. We built it as a 70 or 71. We built it as a single-storied house, which is what was affordable at that time. Uh, in 1972, we built the second floor, but this, of course, is, as I said, an early picture of our house. Interestingly, my father thought of naming it Raj Vasant. So, very thoughtful of him to put my name and part of the name Vasant Vihar. I don't know if you can see out here the nameplate, apart from saying MR Sharma E13 by 8, it says Raj Vasant. So uh, I got quite fed up of the public transport, and I said, look, I'm not going to depend on that. And I started cycling down from Vasant Vihar to Modern School, Barakhamba Road. It was a journey of 12 kilometers, which I traveled on my bicycle, whether it was 45 degrees temperature or whether it was 1 degree temperature, or if it was whether it was raining. But my God, that was some freedom I had. I was not dependent on anyone. I would cycle down, and I can say that those were the days that really helped build my thigh muscles, which are still doing well. And it was a wonderful time of life, and that gave me the courage to go anywhere by bicycle. Anyway, um, uh, there were about 10 years when I was away in Calcutta for my job, but then, as I said, overall we have been here for more than 50 years. The house saw some changes. Some of you know that as of today, I have finally decided to reconstruct that 53-year-old house, and we will hopefully soon have uh, another shape and size and color of the house coming up on that original plot. Um, this opportunity that has come our way of talking about VV Diary is an idea that came to Sanjana because of an initiative that Vandana Bhatnagar started, And I'm going to dive straight away into that and request Vandana to, share with us the whole uh, thinking behind this VV diary. How did this idea come to you, and where do you want to take it forward, and how do you want people to contribute further to it? I'm sure it's not a one-off thing, and that you are wanting to make it an ongoing thing, which I think is a lovely idea. We have other newsletters that come out within Vasant Vihar, whether it's the society newsletter or the club or VVWA, and I think there is something called Samvad. But this VV diary, how is it going to be different, and what exactly is the objective? So, Vandana, over to you. We do realize that you are just recovering from COVID, so your voice is slightly hoarse, but I'm sure you'll do well. Go ahead.
Thank you, Raj, and thank you for setting the tone. I think you've already transported us back in time with your memories. But good evening, everybody. It's really nice to be here in this cold and quarantine-filled time, bonding with each other over old memories. Firstly, I think it's really nice that our fantastic VV Club coordinators chose this theme for the session today. It's Republic Day. It's a special day. It's a good time to reflect on the past. As for how this whole idea of VV Diary came up, it actually was something that came to my mind when I realized that it's been over 50 years since my grandparents' house in C Block had been built. In fact, they completed their construction in 68 and moved in 69, pretty much same time as Raj. And correspondingly, Vasant Vihar as a colony had also completed for 50 years. Now, at a milestone like this, when it comes to our birthdays, anniversaries, we tend to look at albums, we look at old memories, go back in time, but there's nothing like that for our neighborhood. So I thought, it would be nice to make this little milestone gift for our 50-year-old home, Vasant Vihar. And that's really just what the genesis of the idea was. Thankfully, a bunch of other residents also, shared that sentiment and joined in this effort, several of whom are connected today also. I basically, if you think of it, one's home is not really just one's family and our house, but also the local community and the neighborhood. And if you look at in rural areas, people have a deep connect with their village or their ancestral lands. And, it would be great if we could have something of that even for an urban locality. We are living in an urban context, but there's no reason why we can't simulate a bit of that connect with our surroundings. And even when one travels to countries like UK or Ireland, etc., I amaze at how, little towns curate little stories, anecdotes of their towns and share it very proudly with visitors. Which makes the place come to life and also creates a deeper connect for people who are visiting. So that having said, when we go, we know more about those towns, but we remain blissfully ignorant about our own city and our own locality because we're caught up in the rush of daily life. So for instance, when we started doing this project, I was surprised that having lived here for 30 years, I hadn't really been aware that this area had a history going back 600 years to the Tughlaq and Lodi times. I wasn't aware that there was a Muradabad ki Pahadi, which is behind D Block, which is named after a famous Sufi saint from the 14th century. And thanks to Lalita Bhatkar, I learned that there was a sarai in this area till about 100 years ago. If you think of it, Vasant Vihar is still a gateway in some ways to Delhi because it's the first colony as you leave Delhi or you come into Delhi from the airport. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting if you start linking up these little things from the past. And then as we were digging deeper about the milestones and some of the incidents, I discovered about this air crash which had happened in 1973 outside Vasant Vihar, which also happens to have links to a Vasant Vihar family, which suffered a tragedy recently. And then I came across this personal account of the 84 riots, which talks about how Dr. Manik Shaw was a doctor in Vasant Vihar, how he helped victims who were trapped in Guru Har Krishan's school and saved them during that time of riots. And then I came across this happy discovery that this famous film of our childhood, Chashme Badur, was shot in a friend's home, which I hadn't been aware of, and we'll hear more on that. So, these things were interesting. And then we also stitched together a timeline which provided more clarity on how Vasant Vihar transformed from this sedate, simple, government-centric colony of the 80s to this very upscale cosmopolitan colony of today. In the 90s, Vasant Vihar was pretty much the flag bearer of the new consumer trends that were rolling in post-liberalization. Whether it was in food, apparel, entertainment, we were at the cutting edge of it. I'm not sure if that's reason to be proud or not, but we were. So there were all these things which I think one gains insight through this process. And I've enjoyed doing it with other residents. And a big thank you to those who've contributed towards it, given their time and memories. Happily enough, there have been about 1,000 visitors in the last few weeks already who've come and explored it. So I guess, if you're asking about where we want to take this, it really depends on all of our residents and also the club and the VVWA. If we are all interested to carry forward, I think it will be nice to keep this as a running repository and urban archive, which any of us can dip into whenever we feel like being nostalgic. We could even arrange a walk around the colony if we want to be a bit more ambitious. Which recreates and revisits some of these anecdotes and stories. So that's broadly where I'm coming from. And the stories we'll hear today, I'm really glad that through this process, more people have stepped up wanting to share their stories. And I'm looking forward to hearing that. We'll try and archive that as well into this website and keep it running as far as people are keen to keep it going. So that's all I'd like to share, but thank you so much again for giving this.
Very interesting, Vandana. Thank you so much for your sharing this and for starting this initiative. You mentioned the air crash, I think it was 1973. So I remember that vividly because what had happened was that Vasant Vihar had plunged into darkness because I think this aircraft crashed into some high tension electric lines. So we all went up to our terrace, and from there we could see the flames in those hills behind us, and we were wondering what it was. In fact, our tenant at that time was a serving wing commander, and he said, "No, no, 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 air crash nahi ho sakta hai. Wahan ye hoti hai, wo facility hoti hai," all those things. But sure enough, the next morning we heard that, and I and the wing commander's son, we both, and I think my sister also, we walked up to the crash site, picked up some mementos. That aircraft was coming from Madras, and the Madras test match had just happened, and somebody actually had the film that he had shot of the Madras test match. My friend picked up, I think, a broken part of the door of the aircraft, all those kind of things. But another thing that I want to say, I mean, frankly, till you said that, I didn't even know there was a Moradabad Pahadi behind us. But we used to walk down that whole area and walk right up to the airport without any, problem. It was such a lovely terrain behind Vasant Vihar. We could walk right up to the airport and stand there and watch some takeoffs and landing. But again, I would say that there are things around us we don't know. I mean, till the district park was redeveloped, we didn't know that there was such a fascinating, monument there, which had a very interesting story, which one of the guards, when we went there in the beginning, told us about that place. So, plus, we had some old wells. There was one in the park in front of our house. There was another one uh, somewhere behind street E12. And I know that there are people who have done a lot for the water management in this colony, and one of them, of course, or probably the most prominent one, is Mrs. Veena Bhatnagar. I take this opportunity to invite Veena ji to now share her memories. She has definitely been one of the early ones out here. Vandana was more a kid when she uh, came 50 years ago, but Veena ji, I'm sure, can tell us more about it. Veena ji, please.
You'll have to unmute. Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
So thank you for inviting me to be being part of this live diary, I would call it, because Jesse used to writing our diaries, but this is like a coffee table noting of the memories down. And I'm sure it's going to develop into a very interesting long diary. So coming back to the memories part, many people are going to share about what was life like and what was their personal involvement and things like that, how fun life was. But I decided, because the time limit of 4 point maximum of 5-9 minutes that we got, so I thought I'll share the journey rather than any incidents or any things that came particularly in our life, which made it very conspicuously interesting. So the 2 points that have struck me in our journey of, as Vandana, who happens to be my daughter, was mentioning, was that over the last more than 50 years that we've been in deep contact with the colony. First 25 years when our parents settled here, and they were both government servants, and then my husband being in the railways, when he retired, we moved here in 86. And from then on, it was total absorption with the colony life. So to start with, I'd like to say there are two things when I look back over these 50 years of VV's life history as a colony, strike me as amazing, unique, and important. Whenever I'm looking at the BBC serials or some old Lifetime serials, then one sees the small town life. And Raj was very vividly describing what life was like at that time in Vasant. So it reminds you of those days, when the community was small houses spread, and there was such a bonding between each other that I would say people, I mean, the evening we would sit, not we, because I was a child then, not child really, not old enough to have a gossip session together. So I remember my mother-in-law and her friend together, and sort of what we call gossip now, coming to know of each other's life, and but being so close as to be always available for each other, So one could feel that bonding, that warmth, which would come across at that time. And that sort of gradually disappeared as the multi-complexes and the diversity of the population came around. And today the situation is that you may not even know your neighbor living for years together. Tenants come, tenants go, and so on. And yet the interesting thing today is also that the fact is that today probably 3 generations are, if not 2 at least, are sitting here and discussing about their past and feeling the warmth that one feels when one looks back in time. So in today's time, a colony like Vasant Vihar, with such diversity and modernity and such exposure to outdoor life and so on, we can have a talk like this and plan a discussion like this, as well as a long diary that speaks volumes of the type of bonding we still retain of the 3 generations. And it is amazing. I find that very amazing. I don't know how others feel about it. So that is one aspect that I feel that has changed but remained. In the sense, there is distance and yet immense bonding, because we still are 3 generations living here in a way. The first one disappearing gradually, but So coming to the second one, which is more of a focus point for me, and that is the story of water in Vihar colony. To start with, we had only our internal water supply called the unfiltered water supply in today's terms. It started to be called unfiltered because direct tube well supply was being and is being rendered even now through that system. There was no gel board supply. So, but the houses being few, we had enough water. Gradually, as the colony developed, that scarcity aspect came in because the system was not geared to supply so much water. And gel board entered, that pipeline came in. So we had supplementary supply from gel board and the unfiltered supply for the gardens, etc. But even though we were getting supply from the gel board, the pressure on the unfiltered water supply became so much as the colony grew and the water table started falling very fast. So today the picture is that we are down to more than 250 feet as far as the water table is concerned. And I think we must have started by not more than 100 feet when we were there, I mean, in the beginning. So gradually, the problems started magnifying and people didn't sort of realize what was happening. But I'm talking of the time when I entered as a secretary of the cooperative society and took over charge of running the water supply system in the colony through our tube wells, that we were in a mode of crisis, that the water table was falling so fast that we were in the dangerous point of almost losing our scarce resource because it is a rocky surface. So water once finished, it is not there. So then started the urgency of moving towards trying to recharge water. And Deepa Kapoor, as welfare president, took another initiative. As the first colony, we started having water cycling plant, recycling water from the nala, sewage nala, and treating that partially and supplying to the general parks. That was the first initiative of any colony in Delhi. And then I also stepped in and started getting water harvesting done in a major way in the the colony, especially at points where there are two wells to recharge them. So this was very difficult because people were not aware at that time, and it was a huge task to convince people that this was necessary. And today it is a buzzword for the colony water harvesting. But one aspect that we have failed to address even till now is the fact that we are withdrawing water still from the water table, even though we have supply from outside. And I remember there was a point in between where Jal Board was not able to supply adequate water, and we were not able to supply water, so that people gradually started losing the supply of unfiltered water supply. At the same time, the scarcity of Jal Board water supply both came in. And I'm talking about my father, for instance, in E Block, the house where I'm staying. It was a single-story house. The water wouldn't reach the top. And people had started putting boosters and all that gradually on Jal Board line, which now is manifested on the unfiltered water supply line also, leave alone the Jal Board. I don't think there's any house without a booster. But my father used to climb at the age of even till 80 on the roof and see whether there was water in the tank. That was his daily routine. 3 times a day he would do that. That was the crisis level. And believe it or not, even on his deathbed, the first question he asked my mother was, is there water in the tank? So that was the level of crisis we had reached at that point. Gradually, Jal Board stepped in with new pipeline, the supply increased, but we kept on drawing on our water. And people kept on losing that supply because there was not enough water. And the water table kept on going down. Nobody bothered about the fact that we have to stop this. So, personally, I have been raising my voice all the time about the crisis that is existing, losing the treasure trove of water table that we have here by closing this water supply system so that we preserve it. And even now the crisis mode that my father experience remains, because 2 days you lose water supply from Jal Board, and there's hue and cry because our supply doesn't cater to more than 10% of the population. And we are spending about 10 lakhs per year, I mean, loss incurred on this for losing our water table. But there's no outcry. And that is the amazing point. Sorry, I'm running out of time, I think.
Yeah,
but
so I think
I wanted to make this point.
very important.
That is the amazing part.
Very
that in a rare colony like ours, amazing colony is not realizing that they have to stop it. Yeah. Now is the time. Climate change has taught us, but we are not taking action. So my humble request on this platform is that please disseminate this urgency to the people and raise the voice of people to stop this. Enough is enough. Right. So these are two contradictions in the life that I'm finding, that there is bonding and yet there is distance. There is awareness and yet there's lack of awareness, which is amazing in a colony like ours. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Veena-ji. I think you have drawn attention to a very important point. Of course, my voice is echoing somewhere. Two things that you have drawn our attention to. One is, of course, that the Jal Board is now promising to us that after the new pipelines have been laid, there will be better supply, perhaps 24-hour and maybe with good pressure. The other thing is, I think that a lot of effort or initiative has gone behind clean water harvesting. And I do hope that that succeeds in,
that's not enough.
Buffering
that's
up.
Not enough.
Yeah. So
sorry.
I agree. But
this is not a debate.
I'm hoping that that will help in future. Let me move on now quickly to Geeta.
No, that doesn't. The withdrawal is.
Yeah, I'm going to move to Geeta. Quite coincidentally, I came across Geeta while we are both part of an initiative. It's a social organization which is working for the upliftment of people from economically weaker section. That's how I came across Geeta, and Geeta turns out to be also an old resident of Vasant Vihar.
Yeah.
Geeta, go ahead and share your stories.
Okay. Anyway, thank you so much. Well, I should have to go on, a lot of thanking happening. Thanks to, of course, Vandana to get the initiative started. And she happened to be a good friend of my daughter and my son-in-law. So before I knew it, the story had been written almost 3 years ago. And it's only now, and I was delighted to find that it's actually going to be aired in a way, and Vasant Viharis can finally break down their walls, and the guard who sits in front and therefore never knows their neighbors. We finally are opening up our windows a bit. Thank you so much, Vandana, for that opportunity, and Sanjana to bring us on stage. Okay, I do believe that when you think about our house, which is called Kunarika, we might be considered a very sentimental family, because in this new era of builder flats, we seem to want to cling to our roots, and literally. So the story of Kunarika has been brick by brick from day one. In the 70s, from the terrace of our first floor, we could see this huge, vast field on our left, and there actually were horses running in circles. And then I realized later on, they're probably from that gaon, which is what we now call Vasant Gaon, and that huge field where they ran is where Vasant Enclave today stands. So that's how life started off. It was a beautiful thing. We were so lucky to have this lovely space on the left of our house. And then finally we went along, and then we found that, of course, I must tell you how Kunarika got its name. Well, Kunarak was a very famous play which was written by my father-in-law, Mr. J.C. Mathur, and being a Kone Wala Ghar settled it. So Kunarika came to stay. And it was simply an artistically designed by Ma and one Mr. Agarwal, who was the architect. And initially it was only till the first floor, but slowly and surely, and again, brick by brick and room by room, we now have a second floor to take care of the needs of the family. Our aim of all living together has finally got realized, because both my younger brothers-in-law have also retired and have also come to roost in our family home. The drawings which you see in the article which I had written have been done by Samir, the youngest. And we have so many beautiful memories when I think about this home of ours, because one by one, the younger siblings got married. And in fact, in one of our 5-year stints in Delhi, we had 13 weddings of the extended family as well. And we were fortunate to have this lane which goes to the underground tank, which became a little cul-de-sac and an extension for some of the little functions. So it was a very simple kind of living, and we really got away with it at that time. And finally, of course, most of you know that the highlight has been, and which Vandana has mentioned, is Chashme Badur. And I'm afraid I will need to talk about it, because Sai Paranjpe, well, our family is all very, well, we have a theater people, my sister-in-law and her husband, and a lot of all of that. So before we knew what happened, Sai Paranjpe was looking for a cottagey house, and Kunarika fitted the bill. So before you had it, this was Miss Chamko's house, and you often had her walking in and out and asking all the young men around, who are my brothers-in-law, etc., how my Fita is looking, and giving copies of her poetry, which she had written, called Lamhe, to read and things like that. But of course, my shocking moment was when I came home one day and I went up to my bedroom on the first floor and found both Farooq Sheikh and Ravi Baswani happily having their massage on our beds. That took the cake. And of course, that 1 week on their own, they just kept extending it all the time. Before we knew what was happening, we had a lot of ogling moments happening, people from the road stopping and the whole hedge caving in, which we were desperately trying to grow. And of course, the funniest part was that in one of the fist fights which Ravi Baswani has, he had crumpled all the lovely grass which my husband had gone and got from the Pusa Institute. And so then for the movie, they quickly got some clippings which had just spread across the grass with the so-called lawn in the making. And before we knew it, Ravi Baswani gets up with clumps of it hanging from his nose and stuff. They were really hilarious moments, but very, very enjoyable. I'm not so sure I want to talk too much about anything right now, except because you all want to have, there are lots of people to speak. But I do feel that I have to thank Veena Bhatnagar, because I believe they were the ones who started off this community effort, and ours was this first block to have a C block being formed, because the Tagore School was going to have a gate opening up at the back, and how then all the residents got together, and that's how C Block RWA got started, just to prevent being overrun by the colonization and schools coming up and so on. So it is a fervent hope that this whole endeavor will also help to get us together. We miss our Diwali and getting together, even knowing who lives on that, across that other high wall down the road coming up, or the new builder flats, who's coming into it now. We really need to know who we are and where we belong, and have this community spirit being built up again. We look forward to all of that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Geeta. I think you mentioned it and Vinaji mentioned it, that, after the initial phase when some of the houses were here and then more and more got added, we seem to be sort of disassociated with our neighbors. But I do think that in various ways, whether it is Vandana's initiative, whether it is other RWA get-togethers, or social media, it's amazing how knowing email IDs or getting into WhatsApp groups brings back old things.
Certainly.
And, that's how we are getting to know a lot of people.
This is a tremendous initiative. I really hope it's opening up our windows for a lot of us. And for example, I only used to see Sanjana. I'm actually talking to her now and so on. So, and discovering you also. Yeah, lovely meeting you, Raj. And Sanjana.
Quite a well-known personality.
I know. That's why I'm saying that I was just a face in the crowd. So I'm happy I've got to be able to talk to her too. Yeah.
All right. I'm now going to call upon my neighbor, as his nickname is, as I know, is Basi. But I used to know his father, very much. The very polished, dignified gentleman, Commodore P.S. Paswan. His name for me was Chote Sharma ji, but you may not know. Tell us about your memories of being in Vasant Vihar in '69, and I do know that you went away for, I think, schooling, and then of course your service, and then you've been here in and out, and now finally here during the last few years. So please do share with us your memories.
Thank you, Raj, Vandana, Sanjana. My first memories of Vasant Vihar was that of a jungle, because I think it was in the early 60s. My father happened to be visiting Delhi from Bombay, where we were based, and probably met up with me in college. And he took me to this place, Mohammadpur, what is now, what we call Kunarika now. There was a track going almost down the hill. What I could see were plenty of trees, rocks. It's an ideal place for a sarai. And the place probably looked like the remains of a sarai. There were a lot of trees. Again, by then, kikad had started spreading, so Prosopis duriflora, so that was all over the place. And I said, look, we've come to the back of beyond. I've never had a home. I've shifted home about 35 times in my life, if not more. So therefore, one has reached a high stage of detachment. So it was quite a curious, peculiar feeling to actually find a place which you could call home. My father was, as you mentioned, one of the pioneers. Raj, we enjoyed staying in your house. I was only a casual visitor to Vasant Vihar, coming in once in a while. But what I could see, I liked that place. It was very nice. It's quiet. What I do remember very clearly, the sound of jackals. Jackals were all over the place running wild. I could hear a few donkeys for good measure as well, probably domesticated. So this was the kind of sounds that we would get at night. The wailing of jackals was probably the predominant sound. The house was built, my dad got in touch with Chandra Kukreja, who designed JNU. This is the last house he designed, and good architects are kind of prima donnas. He insisted on having his way, but he built his house, and we began living there. My brother and I used to come there occasionally. Leave. Yeah. So these are my earliest memories of Vasant Vihar. The house was home, and we used to come here once in a while. As you know, in the earlier days, Delhi ended at Moti Bagh. There was wilderness all around. Once or twice I was learning how to drive, and we were posted, my dad was in Akbar Road. We used to drive up. I used to learn driving in this area up to the end of Moti Bagh. So it's a place that has changed over the years. It was a very staid place. It was a kind of Sarkari colony in many ways. Everyone knew everyone else. But as colonies expand, obviously the close connection that neighbors have with each other gets vitiated. My father was quite active, and he knew most of the dukandars, used to chat up the sabzi walas and others. So he had a lot of friends and other people in the colony. I was, of course, out most of the time. And of course, Geeta was talking about her house. My cousin Ravi Baswani acted in that movie. And so we recognize the house and remember him and his infectious enthusiasm. Vasant Vihar has changed a lot. There was a time when the colony changed dramatically. We had a major communication problem. The flyover changed all of that finally. The cardinal sin was, of course, objecting to the flyover in the first place, but that has been sorted out now. I'm not too pessimistic about the future. The metro station has come here. Some people are uncomfortable with change. We have to accept it. And personally, I'm pretty upbeat about the future of this colony. So thanks very much. And we can now move on to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Basi.
Basi for short, yes.
Basi, yeah, sorry. I'm going to now move to our next speaker. Somewhere I've lost my sequence.
Kanchan Sinha.
The next is, Ms. Kanchan Sinha. Sanjana, if you could spotlight her.
Done that.
Yeah, okay. So, good evening. Hello, everyone. I'm Kanchan Sinha from 14 Purvi Marg. Okay, I'm going to share very quickly a few snippets from my years of association with Vasant Vihar. What is memorable for me will probably ring a bell with quite a few of you present here. So one of the first memories I have of this place was that when we visited this house in, say, about 71 or 72, of course, we were on postings. My in-laws would stay here. Then all we could see in front is Purvi Marg. All we could see in front was just that Priya. Nothing else, no buildings. There was a lot of pahadi right in front of our house, which looks so stunted now, and most of it has disappeared. And behind that, all we could see was Priya Cinema. So, and then of course, the boundary walls used to be very low those days.
Sorry to correct you. Sorry to correct you, Kanchanji. I think Priya came up much later.
The Priya Cinema?
Yeah, much later. Anyway, carry on.
All I remember of that area in front of the house was that Priya. We could see Priya from our terrace, just the word Priya. Yeah. And there was nothing else apart from that, except all that little pahadi that you see, which now again has more or less disappeared. So, and I was thinking that, okay, what I'm going to narrate may probably ring a bell with quite a few of you present here. So the houses, so, you know, those days, this pollution was not such a major topic of discussion. And during the summer months, and maybe whenever else weather permitted, we could sleep out on the terrace, which to me now is quite unforgettable. And we would even use pedestal fans if it was too humid or too hot, and everyone wanted to be right next to the fan and things like that. And because pollution was not so much, and it was different those days, children used to mostly play out of doors after school hours. They would go back to school and play in the fields there. And even the green patches at home were converted into playing fields for them. Very like kind of rough and ready badminton courts or even cricket pitches were made. And then around the Shahra time, it would be converted into a little arena kind of place where they would put up effigies, handmade effigies, and shoot them down with handmade bows and arrows, which, I mean, now I don't know how many people will be doing this. Coming to my mother-in-law's interest in those days was, you know, gardening. She was a very keen gardener, and especially for vegetables and fruit trees. There was a beautiful flowering Coracia at our gate, I remember, and during season it would be loaded with beautiful pink flowers. Now, of course, it's not there anymore. And we had a huge, very spreading bale tree, and you can imagine everyone was given bale ka sharbat when the bales were ripe. And apart from that, there were all these other fruit trees. She was very fond of growing fruit trees. There was a sharifa, there was anjeer, chiku, amrud, nibu, shehtoot, and even a mulsari tree. Now, of all the fruits that she grew, the nibu was the hot favorite because it could make tons of nibu pani. But what the children were not very fond of was the figs. They were very sweet, very tasty figs that would grow in our little garden, and the children were made to eat it. But sure enough, after the meal was over, you would find all those figs lying under the table because they didn't like it, they wouldn't eat it. And today they are all so fond of it, and they regret not having eaten it when they were getting fresh figs from the garden. of course, my favorite used to be the vegetable patch, because fresh nothing like fresh vegetables. And I remember once a very dear friend, actually Vandana's father, and Vijay Sheel Bhatnagar, he jokingly remarked, he said, Kanchan eats the most expensive moolies in Delhi, alluding to the veggies grown on Vasant Vihar land. And then also I remember the birds. There's so many birds that would come around those days, because maybe because of the trees and the fruits. There would be a lot of parrots coming to eat the guavas, and we would put some grains on the windowsills, and it would be full of these gorayas coming in hordes, and the original Twitterati, I would say, all eating up all the grains, and it was really nice watching them. And now, I mean, the construction happened, and the few survivors of the construction are maybe Harsingar and one Neem ka Ped, and nothing much from those days is left. And all these anecdotes, they form a treasure trove of unforgettable memories. And it's fun to delve into these and narrate them to the children, the grandchildren, whoever is willing to listen. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kanchanji. I am saddened to hear that all the lovely fruit trees, you're talking about them as if they are history.
Yes, they're all gone because of the construction that happened on this.
I wish they were still there and we could have come and stolen some flowers from your trees.
Yes, I know.
Anyway, ye kissa phir kabhi. So I now take the opportunity of calling up our very, very hard-working VVWA Secretary Millie Murgai, who has been very helpful on various projects. Millie, you have been here for many, many years, but you've also been a very active member of the Vasant Vihar community. You did share some pictures of the early days of your house construction, was it?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Would you like me to share them?
Yes, please. Then I can give an explanation. I give a little background to that before that.
Okay.
We moved out of Delhi in 1960. And I remember my father in 68 or 69 brought us 3 children in our old Ford Prefect up to Shantipat. And there was this little hillock, and we stood over there and we said, Pitai, hum yahan kya kar rahe hain? So he said, वो सामने दूर देख रहे हैं ना, वहां पर हमको ना एक प्लॉट मिला है, घर बनाएंगे वहां पर. The children, we 3 were so horrified at the idea. We said, how do you think we can live over here? बोले कि क्या आप क्या सोचते हो कि हम यहाँ रहेंगे? And he said, नहीं नहीं, ये घर है, यहाँ पर हमारा घर है और उस साइड पे चाचा जी का घर बनेगा. That was 68, 69. And then Pitai started building his house, and those are the photographs of 1970s when he built that house. I think, Raj, you have those photographs. Yeah, that is a photograph of my mother digging the first soil. And if you look around, there is absolutely nothing there. There is, she is digging over there, and Raj, there's one more photograph, I think. Oh, no, that goes, yes. And those are when the houses were started being built all around us. I think there used to be a contractor called Daljit Singh who built half of Vasant Vihar. That's what he told my father. You can see him somewhere in the distance. At the back, you can see...
Daljit or Daljit? I think ours was built by a Daljit. Anyway.
Well, I can't remember his name exactly, but he told my father, he said, Vasant Vihar mera hai, maine aadha to maine banaya hai. You will see behind you that the other building, as you can, just could you go back to the original earlier one, you can see a water tank.
Yeah.
If you can go back to the original one, you can see a huge water tank at the back.
Yeah.
Behind Maji and in one of the photographs. That water tank still exists. Whether there is any water in it, I don't know. I think I took a picture of it yesterday and gave it to you. There's a colored photograph of it.
Yeah, I think this one.
Yeah, there it is. You can see it there at the back. That water tank still exists. Now, in 1970, 71, Maji was, they were building that house. That water tank was the solitary building available at that point. This is behind, it is closer to Vasant Lok, I think.
Let's just go back to some more of these old pictures that you
Yeah,
shared.
that's another one of C6, the empty C6 road. There's one more. Yeah. There's the water tank, and this is the school which is on the C2 road. This is this Kendriya Vidyalaya school, and there's the education center in it. This was coming up at that point. That's my father digging the land. There's a photograph. Yes, that's C6 Street in 1971. C6 Street. Now there's a photograph of C6 Street as of yesterday. Can we have a look at that?
Let's go for back. 1 second.
Yep. C6 Street 50 years later. This is a photograph of that same street that we built. Now that was our first memory of Vasant Vihar. I did not come to stay here until much later, but I do remember that my brothers were here, and my brother, of course, promptly walked out of the house one day in a pair of shorts and a Hawaii chappal, and my mother turned around to him and said, "Ab tum Vasant Vihar mein rehte ho, ab aise kapde pehen ke sadak pe nahi jate hain." And he said, "Kyo?" She said, "Vasant Vihar is a bahut posh area." I don't know when that attribute of Vasant Vihar started. At which point did we become a case of a very posh colony? But within, I remember when I got married at that point, it was an attribute that my parents had a house in Vasant Vihar. And I think even today, we talk about this colony as a very posh and a very, a place to live in. I have moved in recently, but I've spent a lot of time here. And I remember my father knew every mochi hair cutter in C Block Market. He would come back and say, "Mochi ke ghar mein na beti hui hai." And he would inform us of that. That was the closeness that the earlier residents had. Now there are too many people over there, but that was what made us so much a part of us. Anji?
I didn't know that in a posh colony you couldn't roam around in shorts. I still do.
I remember my mother saying that to my brother, saying, "Vasant Vihar mein aise nahi ghumte."
Abhi to balki roaming around in shorts has become very posh, no?
No, it's become very posh.
Yeah, but shorts with the Hawaii chappal, yeah, I wouldn't do that.
I also remember, I think the first election was held for the president of Vasant Vihar Club. It was 1990, 91, I've forgotten. My Chachaji was elected as Brigadier Vasant, became the president of Vasant Vihar Club. At the same point, my father was president of the Arya Samaj. Mr. S.D. Vasant was president of the Arya Samaj, and jokingly somebody said, "Dono bhaiyon ne Vasant Vihar pe kabza kar diya." This was, I think, 91. I'm not sure, Raj, which year the election was held. But I remember the club had just recently been started.
I think the club started in 1990.
And that was sort of the big occasion in Vasant Vihar. I mean, we came specially to have a look at the club and see the colony come up. And I also, my very strong recollections of the Arya Samaj coming up bit by bit, one room at a time. And it became a gathering place for a lot of the older people. It became a gathering place for us who were the Arya Samajis to go there. Pitai would go there every Sunday. I believe there people still go there. Unfortunately, I don't go there as much as I should. And it became a very important part of the colony.
No, I think it's great that Vasant Vihar has a church, it has a Gurdwara, it has an Arya Samaj Mandir, it has a Sanatan Dharma Mandir, it has a Shankaracharya Mandir, and I think there is a masjid also
There's a
behind.
synagogue also, Raj. There's a synagogue also.
Okay, lovely. So
Shabbat, yes.
quite,
So 5 religions.
yeah, quite, what should I say? A secular colony in that sense, or Sarv Dharma Sadbhavna Wali colony. I think that's a better word according to me. Let's move on now to our next speaker for the day, and that's Dr. Nirmal Kandhari. Nirmal ji. Nirmal ji, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I have. Good evening, everybody. I am Dr. Ms. Nirmal Kandhari, resident of 11 Munir Kamal, second floor. For many residents, I'm commonly known as Nimma. I have my senior moments, therefore I've written down what I wanted to talk about. Thank you for giving this opportunity to talk about my recollections down the memory lane in Vasant Vihar. Well, my parents-in-law, late Dr. and Mrs. K.C. Kandhari, shifted to Vasant Vihar, 11 Munir Kamal in 1971, when the building was not yet complete. So 6 months later, me and my late husband, Shirendra Kandhari, and our 2 little daughters shifted to this colony. Ours was the only building on Munir Kamal. In fact, the area in front of the house was a total ujad, with nothing but rocks and rocks all around. In fact, it consisted of the denuded hills full of mica, where mica mining was being done illegally. When I shifted, I had to go to work to the Delhi University, and going from home to the university and coming back for me was a real ordeal. There were no buses coming into Vasant Vihar, as just now, Raj, you talked about it. My loving husband...
May I interrupt and remind you that your house was called Rock View?
Yes, I know. Yes, no. You're right, absolutely right. Because we could see nothing but rocks in front of our house. You know? So my loving husband would drop me to RK Sector 1 for me to catch this university special, leaving at 7:30 a.m. But return journey for me became a nightmare. I must narrate to you my first day of coming back from Delhi University to home. I changed 2 buses and I was dropped at Sector 8, the intersection near Sangam, where the conductor explained to me, "Oh, samne Vasant Vihar hai, 5 minute ka rasta hai, aap pahunch jaoge." So there I started walking. The road wouldn't come to an end. I could not take a scooter because I did not know myself the direction to my home myself. Kept on walking, but had a sigh of relief when Samne Wala Vasant Vihar came. I had no inkling of my whereabouts. The colony was very barren, with lots of plots being marked, few buildings constructed and few buildings still under construction. I felt totally lost. And on inquiry from people, I was told that they knew nothing about the so-called Munir Kamal. I felt as if I was lost in a big city of Delhi. After going for almost 50 minutes, I reached home totally exhausted. The next day, I changed my return terminal from RK Sector 8 to Sector 1, from where I thought I could get a scooter back home. Here, on reaching, the scooter walas would not agree to come by saying, "Us ujad mein kaun jayega?" Even as my offering of Vapsi, which in those days used to be 1 rupee and 25 paisa, no one would agree to come. Many a times, I walked from Sector 1 to home. As I mentioned earlier, the area in front of my house was all low-lying hills, remnants of Aravlis. Due to the rampant illegal mica mining, deep ravines had occurred. Our house, being on the periphery, and the solitary house had the honor of 3 thefts. And these are interesting thefts. The first theft was when I could vividly saw three men running away to the hills and then sliding down the ravine so that they could be caught. They had nothing on their clothes except minimum clothing they had on themselves, and they had oil on themselves so that they could not be caught. In the second theft, we lost all our silverware, as it was a trend in those days to display silverware in the shishe wala almari. However, the third theft was a very peculiar one. The burglars could not open the lock, which was locked between the dining room, the drawing room, and the kitchen. They tried their best, but they just could not do it. And in their anguish and vengeance, they ate up all the malai, all the milk lying in the fridge. They also carried a big tumbler of sugar, because if you remember, in those days, sugar was a scarcity and it wasn't ration. How can I forget seeing peacocks coming on the land opposite our house, dancing joyfully? In fact, that hill had become almost like a plateau where my children and their friends used to go to have picnic, where I could watch them from the terrace that they were safe playing there. I'm sure there were no parks in those days. I can never forget the thundering, terrifying sound heard one evening when we were having dinner, as Raj just now you told about the air crash, the Air India air crash, which took place in 1973. We being at the peripheral area of Vasant Vihar, we could see flames, we could see the fire vendors going there and all the noise that followed. I wonder if any of you has ever seen a fight between a snake and a mongoose. Well, I have. Living in 11 Mina Khamar in Vasant Vihar, I have seen a fight between a big snake and a huge fat mongoose for almost 5 to 7 minutes. And later on, they just went back to their dens. The area was totally barren, as I just now said, which now, of course, is infested with so many huge buildings belonging to the states as such. I would end by saying that Vasant Vihar today is optimally developed colony with buildings reaching up to the 4th floor. We are a prestigious colony as we have an excellent location and people who bond together as one big family, as talked about by Veena Bhatnagar. Thank you once again for giving me a chance to share my memories. I, resident of this colony, having lived for much longer time than many others, have taken the liberty of being a historian of time for you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kandhari. Indeed, very interesting memories. But let me tell you that this going in trying to get home, in those days, not at all a bad thing. Even today, I think people who follow Google Maps still get bhatcode.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So not
but then
to
you
worry
see, when
if
you
you got
don't know the
bhatcode
area,
without Google Map or without any road sign, it is properly put up.
But when you don't know the geography of the area so well, everything being, anyway.
No. Anyway, I am now in a slight change of sequence, Himmat, with your permission. I think Jaggi Malhotra, who also had a bad throat, is ready to share his memories. So we'll first take Jaggi and then come to you, Himmat. Jaggi? Jaggi, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, I am muted. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
I thought I was going to read your story, Jaggi uncle.
But he said his throat is better now.
Do it? Okay. Go on.
Would you do it, Sanjana, or you want me to do it?
If you're feeling up to it, please go ahead and do it.
Okay, I'll try that. Otherwise, you take over. But anyway.
Sure.
All right. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And of course, I got a lot to talk about my association. with Vasant Vihar, which goes back as 1958.
Jackie, I didn't get a chance to talk to you, but please, 4 minutes.
Okay, I said that my association with Vasant Vihar goes back to 1958. I had just graduated from NDA after completing my 3 years, and my father, late father, who was the DSP Police Railway Station Old Delhi, came to receive me and congratulated me and gave me an envelope, which I put in my NDA blazer. After I completed my holidays and I was going back to join my ship, my father said, "Have you seen what I gave you?" I said, "No, I did not." He said, "Come on, I took a plot for you. Let me show it to you." So we were staying at that time in old civil lines. And from there we drove for about 45 minutes to 1 hour and came across a railway crossing, which was closed. So we had to wait 20 minutes wait for that. And then we drove further another 15, 20 minutes to reach a barren land, which my father wanted to present to me as a gift. So I told my father, "Thank you very much. I'm very obliged. But whatever the amount you have paid, the advance money, if you give me that money instead, I will buy a scooter, which I'm very keen to buy." So I take 800 square yard plot in Vasant Vihar for 1,500 rupees to buy a Vespa scooter. So that was my first association with Vasant Vihar. Then I left Navy premature and came to Delhi and joined Thapper's Greaves Cotton. When I came there, I wanted to rent a house. I came to Vasant Vihar, liked it, but wasn't keen to move because it was very years of work, which was on. But the landlord met me and he was desperate to rent it out the place because he had taken a bank loan and he had to pay. So he gave me a 450 square yard plot house, single unit, beautifully built for only 800 rupees. So I went into the house, paid 800 rupees. Imagine, and 800 rupees for a single unit. My third time was then I left Greaves Cotton and joined Lawton. Now I wanted to buy a place in Vasant Vihar. I want to buy, and there was another friend of mine from the Merchant Navy who also wanted to buy. So we both started looking for a suitable plot or a house to buy. Now this gentleman looked for a house in A block, and on a 400 square yard plot, he was offered a single unit for 2.5 lakh rupees, which my friend did not take. He said, "Look, you bought the place for so much, you spent so much to build it to make a profit, 2.75 lakhs, and the deal didn't go through." So my friend sailed off and he came back after 3 months. The house wasn't yet sold out. So he told him, "Okay, I'll give you 2 lakhs and you give it to me." He said, "No, the price has still gone. Now I'll give you only for 3.5 lakhs. He didn't take it. So many, every time he came, the price went up. And finally, he could not do it. In the meantime, house, and I bought a house in A block for 10 semi-built house, 450 square yard plot for about 10 lakhs. And my friend told me, "Look, you are from services and you have no business sense. You paid too much." I said, "Okay, it doesn't matter. I've now paid it and I liked it." And eventually, because the prices had gone up so much that he couldn't afford. So that was the third association. And then I'm talking about the prices part of it only. And then my daughter wanted to buy a place in Vasant Vihar, and she bought it opposite to my house, a flat apartment, third floor. And how much she paid? She paid in crores. So imagine that from the scooter I bought, and then 10 lakhs for my house, and my daughter finally paid crores to buy apartment, not even a house. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jaggi. I think there was a little network issue. I hope people were able to hear you clearly. I'm now going to ask a gentleman who, sorry, I'm still referring to you as a gentleman, Himmat, uh, who is perhaps the youngest on the panel today, but his claim to fame is that he was born and brought up, bred in Vasant Vihar. So he perhaps has fairly vivid memories of various phases of his life. Not that he is an old man now, but I'm sure he can tell us something in a slightly different style from what everybody else who's talking about the uh, 1960-1970 की कहानियां. Himmat, over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Sharma, and thank you very much, Vandana, for giving me the opportunity to chat to you all today. I know a lot of you by, personally. I know a lot of you by face and a lot of you by name. Just to give you a quick background, my grandfather was Rear Admiral Satinder Singh. So he was one of the original residents of Vasant Vihar. He moved here, I think, in the mid 70s. I was born in 77. So I might be a little older than some of you. But I have done schooling, not only modern school Vasant Vihar, but before that, I was at a nursery school called Shishu 1. I don't know if anyone remembers that or not. So I am, from that perspective, a dyed-in-the-wool Vasant Vihari, in the sense that my children are now fourth generation residents. What I would just like to quickly just talk about is it's more almost a giving of thanks to Sant Vihar more than anything else. Basically, because when I look back at life, and I look at the closest friends that I have even today, these are all friends who I made when I was in school. And the common thread that we had going through all of us was that we were all residents, we all lived in Sant Vihar, we all went to the same school. But after school, we spent all our time together. So whether it was just literally, we were kids. I mean, just walking from one another's to another's house, just ringing the doorbell, asking if they're around, or cycling. And we've explored every nook and cranny of the Sant Vihar, whether it's, as you said, the quarries from the end of Purvi Marg going through pretty much to the airport, the hill behind D Block, what we used to call Priya Park. I think it's called a district park now. So, we had given our individual parks were given names based on, which one of our friends lived next to those parks. So I think for me, more than anything else, there's 9, I'm a group of 9 very, very close friends, even today, 6 of whom were, people who lived in Sant Vihar. 3 were in West End and 6 were in Sant Vihar. So all either armed forces or, the civil service background. And I think if I had to give a theme for me, as far as the Sant Vihar is concerned, I would say it's an expression, the ties that bind. And for me, the sense of community that I have got by living in the Sant Vihar, which holds me in good stead even today. Like I said, my closest friends continue to be those that I had spent time with, walking, cycling, playing in Sant Vihar, when it was a lot easier to do than it is now for my children to do. I would love very much for them to do that, but unfortunately, just given, I suppose, the increase in traffic and overall, I suppose, the world has moved on. But I am eternally thankful to my granddad for having had the foresight to sort of, settle down here after he retired from the Navy. And that has given me an anchor. I've studied in New York, I've lived in Singapore, but at heart, I have always considered myself to be a Vasant Vihari. And as I said, these ties for me go back I'm 44 years old, and they pretty much go back 44 years. And I can't imagine it any other way. So I'd like to thank Vandana and also Sanjana for putting all this together and just giving me an opportunity to think about and put into words what Vasant Vihar has done for me as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Himmat. Your story reminds me, and I think you know that, of the experiences or the lifetime of my own son-in-law, who was also sort of born and bred in Vasant Vihar and studied in modern school. One interesting anecdote of what living in Vasant Vihar does and the parks of Vasant Vihar do is that my daughter took our dog out for a walk, and she met this boy who also was walking his dog, and they met and became friendly, and then got married. So just living the 8 houses down the road, walking their dog, they met, and of course my son-in-law calls himself a hardcore Vasant Vihari, and would not think of stepping out of it. He's even made his office here. Thank you so much, everyone. I had thought that we will have a little more interaction between the speakers or panelists today, but I think we have overstepped or overshot our time limit. And Sanjana and I decided that perhaps one session or the 75 minutes were not enough for people sharing these anecdotes. Vandana Bhatnagar has set us off on a very interesting path. So we propose that we will have another session of similar stories or new stories that people can come up with. And I think Sanjana has already put it up on chat that the next date is what? 7th Feb?
9th of Feb.
9th Feb. So 9th Feb, which will again be a Wednesday, we shall, anybody who wants to talk about their journey or their memories of Vasant Vihar, please do get in touch either with Sanjana or with me, and we will be
Or
putting...
with Vandana as well. Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
Raj, would you like to read the comments, because there were quite a few comments before we quickly close up?
Yeah. All right, so let's go right to the top from the beginning. Shivraj Prasad says, just love the idea of creating common narratives and keeping the legacy of generations alive. Vandana, you've done a fabulous job. I know, as I have been reading and troubling you for more nuggets. Chandas says, Vandana, this is fabulous. This is a fabulous initiative. Looking forward to reading more. Anika says, it's a great initiative. We shifted to Vasant Vihar much later, but have fairly good memories of visiting friends and relatives who moved into Vasant Vihar early. It is good to hear from people who were instrumental in developing this unique residential colony of Delhi. Actually, this comment is Sunil Mathur. Then Chan says, a VV walk is a great idea. Hope this can happen post-COVID. Nija Bhatia says, Bhatia or Bhatla? Really enjoying hearing everyone strip down memory lane. Love the idea of the VV walk too. Anita Verma says, Vandana, really happy to attend this meeting, staying in Vasant Vihar for last 40 years. Lovely listening to all. Meenu Gulati says, a very welcome initiative indeed. Vandana has given the email ID at which you can all contact her. It's vvtimeline@gmail.com. Neha Katyal says, a very good initiative, especially for someone who has come to Vasant Vihar, who had come to Vasant Vihar as a bride. Getting to know this wonderful place and its residents better, and the lovely memories being shared by each one of them. Padma Chib says, an excellent initiative. Would love to hear about Shanti Niketan too. To invite members to share memories of that as well. Absolutely, Padmaji. Perhaps in the next one, the 9th February one, we can ask people from Shantiniketan. Actually, you are the seniors of Vasant Vihar in a sense. It came up slightly earlier than Vasant Vihar. Then Vandana, okay, that Vandana is of course saying lovely memories to Kanchan Auntie. Great pics. Millie says Nirja Bhatla. Vinita wants to know where is the synagogue? Who talked about the synagogue? Can you please share what's the location of the synagogue?
So I just shared that it's in D block. I don't have the exact address, but I saw it on the net that there is one here.
Okay. And you said there is a Chabad in D block.
Yeah, it's a Chabad actually, not a synagogue.
Okay. Shiv Raj Prasad, Neha Katyal, Vanna, they're all saying lovely memories, vivid memories. Shivraj says 1992 walked all the way from RK to VV. Well, I've also actually walked from Motibag several times, all the way up to home. Jasleen Kaur says, wonderful listening to everyone. Padmani Mathur says, lovely memories. Nija Bhatla says, we moved here in 1983. Though the house was made 10 years later, would love to speak at your subsequent edition. Share memories. Sure, Nija, get in touch with one of us. Reva Dayal says a charming, useful, and most interesting Zoom for us, Vasant Viharis. And as I said, Sanjana has announced we will have a follow-up session on February 9th. Send your details to one of the three, Sanjana, Vandana, or Raj Sharma. And we shall.
Raj, I'd like to come in for a moment.
Yes, sir. Just let me just finish the. Jasleen says Auntie Bhatnagar would often bring aam ka panna, lovingly made by her with dried mint leaves grown by her for us when my parents were building our house here in early 70s. How refreshing that would have been. All right, Mitali says, lovely trip down the memory lane by the Vasant Viharis. Learned so many tidbits behind this colony. Neja says, congratulations and compliments. I like that statement of opening our windows. Lovely. Indresh Narayan says, what a lovely evening. Look forward to the next meeting. Alka Ambo says, joined late, but really enjoyed the trip down memory lane. Mr. or Ms. Vandari says, great initiative. Look forward to VV Walk. Thank you, organizers. Very enjoyable. Alka Ambo wants to join on Feb 9th. All right. So at this stage, I welcome our club president, Lieutenant General Shankar Prasad, who also I know is one of those who has had his house here from the early 70s. General Shankar Prasad, over to you.
Thank you so much, Raj, and thank you so much, Sanjana. I must share with the participants today that Sanjana has been asking me for a few days, a few weeks before today, that if I would do anything on the Republic Day per se and the military part of it on today's program. And I'm so happy that I declined to do it. And then came up this idea of the Vasant Vihar Diaries. I think this has been a far more interesting session than what could have been in respect of the military and in respect of any other issues related with the Republic Day. Since the morning, the theme has been very nostalgic. It's been nostalgic because we want to live through the periods of the 1950s till today and how the changes have taken place. Most of us would have seen the Republic Day parade today, and we started with the 1950s of the military and ended up with the current days. So that's been the change, and this is exactly what has been happening in Vasant Vihar. We all started living here in about the 1970s, and as Raj said, my parents were here since 71, but of course I was doing military service, I was in and out, but my wife and my children stayed here ever since then. I went to modern school as Raj has gone, and so many of us have gone to, of course, Parakamba Road. What I wanted to really say was that this is a great initiative by Sanjana and Raj. It's been, it's perhaps the most popular of the Zooms that has happened in the last few weeks. I want to also say here that the magazine which we started in the current session of the present committee is called Community. And the purpose of this magazine has been to bring to notice, to bring to all of us together by sharing each other's experiences and what we expect and what we don't expect to happen here. So this is now about the 8th or the 9th magazine that we are out. I suggest to all of you that while these sessions will continue and the 9th February one will be very much welcome, if you wish to write an article, if you wish to write something, because here the time is limited, you get 4 or 5 minutes to speak about what you want to speak. But if you want to write something about the nostalgic of Vasant Vihar, reminiscences of Vasant Vihar, or how you've grown and seen Vasant Vihar change, it'll be a lovely idea to put an article in the magazine with photographs and with any other anecdotes that you want to. The community magazine's sole purpose is to live Vasant Vihar over time, over the period that we have been here for the last 50 years. And of course, the club has been here since 1990, as Raj said. We celebrated the Silver Jubilee 3 years or 4 years ago. And I think it's a wonderful idea. This is perhaps the most popular or most enjoyable session we've had on the Zoom session. Thank you so much for doing it. All what I wanted to sum up was that we'll continue to do this on the 9th of February. And I would like you to contribute your writings to the community magazine so that you get more space, you can write more freely, you can express better, and I look forward to all of that. Thank you so much, Raj, for putting up this program. Thank you so much, Sanjana, for not letting me do the Republic Day and do this. Otherwise, this may not have happened and I would have yapped something rubbish about the military and about the Republic Day, but this has been a far more interesting session. So as luck would have it, Vasant Vihar is now getting onto the right path and we are all going to come back as a community. And many of the speakers said, which I have been listening, that we have lost contact with each other because the way the high-rise buildings have come up here and the guards and closed gates and things like that, we need to get back as a community. So let us get back as a community, let us get back more friendliness. And as one of the speakers said, in the olden days, the people who really built this colony used to have enough time to gossip. And that gossip seems to have got lost. And I think it's a good idea to begin gossip, if nothing else, on the magazine or on this Zoom session. Thank you so much and good night from me and wish you all the very best.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. I'm glad you brought up the issue of Republic Day. Sanjana asked me why I was so formally dressed in a jacket and I said it's only because I wanted to wear my lapel pin of the Indian flag. So that was the thing.
And the reason to have
Sorry, I'm just going to say that I'm going to contradict General Shankar Prasad. I'm not looking forward to gossip, but yes, interesting discussions and debate. No gossip.
Yeah, gossip was for the people who had nothing to do. You have enough to do these days. So gossip is converted into, more fruitful activity.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, Sanjana?
I was just saying the idea to have this session today, the VV Diaries, was, first of all, it came out very timely. Just a week or 10 days ago, Vandana posted about it. And since it's Republic Day today, which we celebrate, so we are celebrating it in our own way by bringing the community together and meeting each other, perhaps on a virtual platform, but hopefully very soon face to face. So with that hope and prayer that we can meet each other very soon and in safe environment, I would like to say thank you for joining, and thank you, Vandana, for starting this this whole virtual storyboard. I think it's going to grow leaps and bounds, and I'm sure many residents are going to contribute to it. And thank you to all the speakers who took their time and they composed and they thought about what to share with us. And we look forward to many more people coming forward and sharing their stories. And perhaps the same speakers can come and share some other stories as well. They are most welcome.
Yes, I agree with you that special thanks to Vandana because she is the one who triggered this session for this evening. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Wish you all good night and stay well. And Vandana, especially you just recovering from your illness. So wishing you
Thanks.
speedy recovery.
So this was
Take
good.
care.
Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
All right. Take care. Good night, everyone.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Good night, everyone. Bye bye.